Rangers fans, welcome to season 3 of Liberty Blue, the essential New York Rangers podcast. I'm Andrew Chelney. That's Nick Zararis. And Nick, they won 2 games this week. One that wasn't even against the worst team in the league. So that's, by comparison, improvements, baby. Woo!
You can only play who's on your schedule. That's the first part of this conversation. Yes, they won 2 hockey games. They have, for at least till tomorrow, given everybody a little breathing room. There isn't a need to make every single game a referendum on everything. I know everybody is kind of getting to a breaking point where we're all trying to mentally wrap our heads around the fact there's still like 40 something games of this to go. And this team is just really boring to watch on a nightly basis. Like that game against the Bruins was one of the more dull games. And look, I know both teams had a lot of chances in that third period back and forth, but there's a difference between having a lot of chances and an exciting and good hockey game. There were a lot of up and down, back and forth, and then Swayman had a very nice third period and prevented the Rangers from extending that lead. But don't go taking anything crazy out of the last 3 games. Washington is a pretty good team and handled the Rangers pretty convincingly. I know on the ESPN broadcast yesterday, they had said that Laviolette didn't feel like the defensive effort was that bad, which in coach speak means it was very bad. But I'm at a point now where watching these games feels like a chore. It's not fun. It's not enjoyable. Like, at the very least, I should be like, well, at least Brett Berard looks like a functional player. They seem to have figured out what a functional NHL fourth line looks like that doesn't feature multiple plugs. It's nice Johnny Brodzinski got back in the lineup and scored a goal, even though he should have been in the lineup basically this entire time. That we should be celebrating these small victories, but instead, it just kind of feels like none of this matters. Like, these individual games are just buckets of drops of water in a bucket of a big season, and with so much uncertainty on the horizon and so much narrative talk driving the bus, it's hard to really care about these individual games. Great, you hung a 6 spot on the Blackhawks, great. It really doesn't impress me all that much. You barely beat the Bruins, okay, fine, and then Washington, who's actually good, threw you around for 3 periods. You can say you had a good start. That's great and all, but starts don't win hockey games. Finishes do. So everybody can take a breath till tomorrow, but the schedule is going to get hard again, man. You got Dallas and New Jersey this week, and the schedule does not get any easier.
There are a little bit of signs of life from this past week that at least it's like, okay, is this finally the beginning of something that could be better than whatever the hell December was? Like, Zibanejad in the first period against Chicago gave the turnover goal against, but then he had some really nice plays. He said, he was actually doing positive things offensively. He back checked a little bit in that game, so it's like, okay, well, we have it's better. We have a little bit of progress. The one thing again is like I can't. Ryan Lingren continues to play hockey games, and it just it's really baffling to me at this point. I'm not saying that Zach Jones is going to win the Norris. I'm not saying that Zach Jones is this outstanding defense, like Adam Fox-esque defenseman who should be playing top minutes every night, and it's an absolute war crime that he's not playing 30 minutes a game. That's not what I'm saying. But Zach Jones is objectively better than Ryan Lindgren, and the fact that Ryan Lindgren continues to play on the top pairing, mind you, instead of Zach Jones, is nothing short of a complete joke. It really is, and objectively, Ryan Lindgren cannot play NHL defense right now. He just can't. Watch him play. And again, we talked about this before. I'll say it again. If you don't want to believe me, if you don't want to believe the stats nerds, the analytics and the charts and all these things that some people hate out there, just go watch him play. He's slow to pucks. He can't defend, really. Like, he's not doing anything. So, and he's also anchoring the hell out of Adam Fox. Adam Fox has to play both. He's pinching the offensive zone and then having to sprint back on defense because he knows his partner can't do anything to help him out on defense. Zach Jones should be playing over Ryan Lindgren. That shouldn't be a hot take, but to some people, I guess it still is because he's a hashtag warrior and a hashtag glue guy and a hashtag whatever. There are a little bit of signs of life that I liked from this past week that makes me think, okay, maybe this isn't as dead as we feared it could be. They beat Boston, which isn't a great team by any means. They got a lot of problems, but they did win the game, which is better than we could have said for the pretty much entire month of December. Like they beat Dallas that one time. It's like, okay, well, what about everything else? What happened in the rest of the month that that kind of overshadowed it? But okay, so you beat Boston. You lose to Florida early on. It could have been a lot worse, I guess, is the main takeaway. Ryan Lingren did injure his own goalie in the process, and now Shesterkin's on IR. But okay, so you lose to Florida, but like the highlight of that game is it could have been worse, which isn't much of a highlight. But with this team, you kind of have to hang on to what you got right now. Okay, so then you go into Boston, you beat them, that's good. Okay, signs of life. Then you get to Washington, you force a couple of turnovers, you make Lindgren make that silly pass up in the middle. Kreider gets the goal. Okay, bad defense, shaky goaltending. Okay, you lose to Washington and then you hang a sixth spot on Chicago. But again, earlier on in the season, they lost to that same Chicago team. So like you said, they can only play who's in front of them. They can only beat who's in front of them. And yes, winning 6-2 against the literal worst team in the league is not much to celebrate about, especially when you're a team that's allegedly a playoff team. God forbid a Stanley Cup contender team like the Rangers supposedly are. But like, it's better. Comparatively to what they did the last time they played, this is better. So I'll take what I can get at this point.
They were like 5-15 in their last 20 games going into the weekend. They have been an unmitigated disaster for close to a month. And it's multifaceted. There are a lot of layers as to why things have unraveled the way they have. When you're thinking about the building blocks of how this team is structured, they're set up where their baseline is elite goaltending. If they're not getting at least 910 to 915 goaltending, they already have a shaky foundation. Then the next tier up from that would be your special teams play. The kill has been mostly fine this year, but the power play has been awful. I've got a lot of power play stats. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But special teams is that second tier. The next tier up from that is the Panarin-Fox duo at 5-on-5 of we're getting the Panarin line out there with Adam Fox as much as we can, as often as we can, and that's the third part. The fourth part is the supposed secondary additional scoring of Zibanejad, Kreider, Riley Smith, etc. And then at the very top is who everybody else, Berard, Cooley, etc. Right now, I would venture as far as to say they basically have one of their key planks of the season working right now, and that's the secondary depth guys. I do not think you could say anything about the way this roster was constructed is working the way it was supposed to. I've got a lot of power play stuff. I've got stuff for the Trocheck, Panarin, Lafreniere line this year versus last year in the stats, and everything bears out as being worse. And when you have, 4 of your 5 key planks of your team all regress at once, that tells you two things. Number one, it tells you that everything is very tenuous, and we know that this is professional sports. It's very easy for marginal decreases in talent, marginal offsets in talent, however you want to phrase it, all compounding together. 1 or 2 scoring chances per game doesn't sound like a lot, but if that's each player on each line over the course of an entire season, then it really starts to accumulate. We're almost at the halfway point. So a lot of these numbers, it feels reasonable to say this is a decent sample size for what's wrong with the team. You look at the power play this year versus last year. You look at the Panarin, Lafreniere, Trocheck line this year versus last year. The drop off is there. It's in the numbers. It's not just everybody watching says, well, Trocheck doesn't look as on the puck and Panarin's not shooting as much. The numbers bear that out. And this is all tenuous. We talk about it a lot that in pro sports, you usually don't know it's over until it's already over. A lot of people keep looking around and wondering, it's like after Ferris Bueller when the movie ends and he comes down the hallway and says, what are you still doing here? Go home. It's over. That's kind of what happens in professional sports. Everybody always says, we'll be back. Everybody likes to take that picture of them standing out on the field while the other team celebrates after the game. Stephon Diggs, that was really cool 4 years ago, but he's not even on the Bills anymore. And the Texans are probably a first round exit this weekend against the Chargers. Shit changes really fast in sports. And just assuming that everything is going to stay exactly the same year over year is crazy. I mean, you go back and watch or listen to any of the episodes from last season where we said, well, Panarin's having the year of his life at 33. You probably can't bank on that going forward. Trocheck is having the year of his life at 32. You probably can't bank on that going forward. And lo and behold, every single player on this team has regressed since last season. And you might say, well, if everybody's regressed, that means it's not just the individuals, that there's something wrong environmentally. Good, we agree. There's something wrong here. There's clearly something wrong. That's the thing that kills me. Because
Sure.
I've seen more than one person say that is, well, if everybody's regressed, doesn't that mean there's something wrong more than just the players? Yes, we've been saying
Yes.
this for a
Thank you.
while.
Yes.
But
Thank you. Thank you for coming on board.
there are layers to these problems. I just laid out 5 planks. All 5 of those planks aren't working. The vibes are off. The energy is off. And we'll talk about how Mark Messier only talks about the Rangers when he might be able to get a job. Ditto with Sean Avery. But like at a certain point, man, it is what it is. This is what the Rangers are. They've settled. They've calmed the waters a little bit. They look a little more functional, but I'm not getting my hopes up here. I mean, the best case scenario is you go into a first round series against Florida or the Devils, and you probably lose in 5 games to a more talented team. Like, that's the best case here for what this group is. I mean, the last thing I'll leave you with before I throw it back to you, Borgen and Vakanainen have been fine for the last week and a half, but there's a reason that the Ducks and the Kraken, 2 teams that need defensemen, were willing to give those guys up. If Borgen, who's 28 and has like 200 something career NHL games, was anything of note, he probably would still be in Seattle because they need guys. And Vakanainen, former first round pick like 9 years ago, as I forget who made the joke first, but whenever an insider leads with former first round pick, that player's not that good. That player's not that good. Because if they
Yeah.
had any accolades of note,
Yep.
they would have led the release with that.
I remember when the Rangers signed Jack Johnson a couple of years ago, and I think it was Drager or Friedman or whoever it was, couldn't find a positive thing to say about Jack Johnson, the hockey player. So they let off a 280 character word salad about how great of a character they are, locker room guy, and 0 about actually how they functionally play hockey. Like, that's the equivalent. When insiders and those guys are leading off with former first round pick, locker room guy, everybody loves him, whatever. I said this, a couple of months ago on the show as well. When someone talks about a player, whether that be in hockey or in general, someone talks about a player and their first lead off phrase isn't about how well they play, then they are bad at what they do. That's just objectively true, because you don't lead off talking about Wayne Gretzky about how people liked him in the locker room. You don't do that, right? When you talk about Wayne Gretzky, right, you're greatest goal scorer of all time, fastest, greatest assist man, whatever you want to say, you highlight his accolades on the ice first. But for some reason, we have found a loophole in our sports talking society where if someone is bad, but you like them as a person, you go, okay, locker room guy and glue guy, and people love him, and nothing about the way they actually play the game. Same thing can apply here. And we talked about this, and if you go back to most of the episodes from later on last season and take a shot every time we said this, and you maybe don't, because it might be a lot, but we said that season, obviously minus the Hedel injury, was essentially best case scenario for the Rangers in a lot of aspects. You mentioned Panarin, best year of his career, Trocheck, best year of his career, all of these comeback wins, everything was going well for them, franchise record in wins, and they were rolling. Everything that could have went well for them went well for them. Cooley had a decent, like, no one expected Cooley to make the team last season out of training camp. He was a staple. He performed well. Things were going well. You cannot expect the best case scenario to happen 2 years in a row. You physically cannot. And if you do it, it's fool's gold. And that's kind of what happened this season. They ran it back, right? Oh, last year was amazing. Oh, we'll just have the same team again. And surely everything is going to go well, right? But
Surely you can
yeah,
replicate the exact same results
yeah,
in a totally different world. You
right.
know that it's one of those things where you have to be realistic, and we've known the Rangers are a little, I'll say, high on their own supply as far as over believing in their own guys. And that's been an issue for a long time that spans three different general managers. Basically, my entire conscious memory has always been the Rangers overrating their own players, their own prospects. But as far as like tangible problems, we'll start going through some of the numbers now because I do want to illustrate that this is not just a one or a two level thing. This is like everything that can possibly go wrong going wrong simultaneously. So this is first. This is just the power play. So we're going to start talking about this in terms of just where the scoring chances are coming from because this visual is very useful. On the right-hand side, you will see the orange, the darker the orange, the better. That means more scoring chances where they're coming from. If you'll notice, the most dangerous chances are in and around the net front. We know this is where you want to be if you're on the man advantage. And what do those chances typically look like? If we're talking about this circle right here at the front of the net front, we know those are Chris Kreider scoring chances. In the high slot, those are Vinny Trocheck scoring chances. On the left-hand side at the circles, that's a Zibanejad scoring chance. The blue spot in and around the circle, that's Panarin. And then up at the point is Adam Fox. If you compare this last year, which is on the right, to this year, which is on the left, you will notice a conspicuous lack of net front scoring chances, which we can tie to Chris Kreider being injured or more ineffective, whichever one you want to go with. He was out yesterday. We know there's a nagging back injury there, but you'll notice there's more chances from the circle, more chances from the point, fewer from the dangerous areas of the ice. This is a direct and evidential path to showing the differences with the power play. I'm going to get to the actual numbers in a minute, but just visually, the shot maps tell you they are shooting the puck from lower danger areas and it is causing problems for them. And then where is it? Is it this one? I want to make sure. This is the overlay. So the darker colors are the ones that are year over year stronger. So this tells you the darker colors are where they're shooting the puck more from this year than last year. This is last year. This is this year's shot map superimposed over last year's with a transparency effect. And they are shooting the puck a lot more from the left circle and from the point in comparison to last year. That tells me they are not getting the puck to where they need to. And then real quick, I'll do this as well, get this out of the way just so I can take this off. If you'll notice, the Zibanejad scoring chances from last year are on the left, from this year are on the right. This is only on the power play. You'll notice a lot more of these chances that are creeping down towards the net front. Of course, you'll say, well, Nick, they played 82 regular season games last year. They've only played, 40 some 30 something this year. Of course, but you'll notice a higher concentration of shots from more dangerous areas, which is where you want to be. The entire point of the power play is that you are in a more favorable position to shoot the puck. And when you have that numbers advantage, when you have that opportunity, you want to be doing something with it. You get that puck to dangerous. The whole point of the power play, you have a two times greater advantage to score based on statistical probability than you do at 5-on-5 on the power play. Two times as great of a chance. And the Rangers power play, which has been their calling card for the entire post 2021 window, is just not there.
It's not there, and teams have figured them out. And you can tell that based off of the maps that you showed, and also just a variety of factors. Like, okay, you can argue Kreider not being healthy / older / insert third reason here that you want to put in is affecting that, and you'd be right. But when you look at that map and you go, okay, Zibanejad is that dark blob on the left side, and he's going to either try to force a pass through 17 people or take a shot that might go in. If on the rare occasions he does shoot, maybe it'll go in. But the penalty kill for other teams have figured out, okay, The Rangers are going to try to force that pass, and they're not going to try to get that Kreider deflection this year. Again, whether that be because Kreider's hurt or not, or he's old, I don't know, and we'll never know until 25 years from now when the book comes out. But as of right now, the Rangers have moved away from what made them a lethal power play this year, and for some reason, we're not on the team. We don't know the actual reason, but they've changed their approach to the power play, and it hasn't worked. And when things don't go well, and when nothing goes well for a team that won the President's Trophy last year, made it to the conference finals, and now they're one of the worst teams in the league, you grip your stick too tight. You try to force these passes. The Rangers' favorite pastime is trying to force passes through 7 sticks, and they do it 75 times a game. That is their calling card. That is the thing that they would pay so much money to just keep doing that. Like, they love that stuff. The game against Chicago yesterday was better in the sense that I saw a lot more of just shoot and see what happens. Just get the puck on net, simplify the game, and see and hope that it goes off of someone's back and in the net. And that's what happened. I mean, there was one of the goals that bounced off of Hedo's butt and it went in the net, which is something that we haven't seen a whole lot from the Rangers specifically this year. This was like 2 weeks ago. That wouldn't have been a shot. That would have been like a forced pass again through 6 people, and that probably would have been blocked, and the puck goes the other way. I like what I see. I like what I saw. Again, it's Chicago. You can only play who's in front of you. I like what I saw in terms of, okay, the Rangers are clearly trying to just simplify as much as they possibly can, right? When the fraction is 4-8, you need to get it to 1-2. That's what your math teacher says. You got to simplify the fraction. The Rangers are trying to simplify the game of hockey right now. Just get the puck on net and see what happens. And right now on the power play too, they're not doing that as much as I would like them to. When the cross crease pass through the entire other team isn't working, just shoot the puck, man. There's somebody in front of the net, whether that be Kreider or whoever else, that will
keep talking. I'm grabbing my Zararis board.
that will do their best as Nick walks away from the recording. That, when that pass doesn't go through, there's going to be somebody in front of the net that will come in and try to control that rebound. It's a power play for a reason. You have an extra player on the ice that can clean up the loose change. Like, that's part of the reason a power play is so effective. That's part of the reason why power plays are so dangerous. This is not rockets. Like, this is not breaking news. You have an extra player on the ice comparatively to the other team. So park that person in front of the net, get shots through, and have that person clean up the loose change. If it's not Kreider, who can deflect goals and pucks like it's nobody's business, have somebody there that can at least fight for space at the crease and get these rebounds in the net. Like, you have to simplify the game. I saw that a little bit more in the Chicago game, at least on 5-on-5, which is better. It's again, listen, Chicago's the worst team in the league. I don't want to have any big conclusions that I'm drawing from that experience, but they played Chicago. It's not like they chose their opponent. So they played Chicago, simplified the game, and it worked out for them. They have to continue that. And like you mentioned, their schedule, the next few games and the next few weeks really, is daunting again. They just went through this, and they're going to keep going through it again. You got Dallas, you got New Jersey, you got Colorado, you got all these teams that are coming in that are always threatening to score 10 goals. They might give up 10 goals, such as Colorado, but they also can score 10 goals on you. So when you're facing a team like that, and you're the Rangers that have been struggling mightily defensively, you have to get goals any way you can to at least make this a race to 10. At least make this. You have to find ways to create offense. If you're not going to defend at all, like the Rangers haven't done this entire season, pretty much, you need to essentially do what Edmonton does and win every game 8-7. And you got to find ways to create somehow. And if you can't do it on the power play and you can't do it on 5-on-5, where are you creating this offense?
So one of the things we talked about a lot last year, as far as why the power play was successful, was the fact it was multifaceted. They had multiple ways they could attack you, put pressure on you, and make you uncomfortable. And one of the reasons why I think putting Lafreniere in the Zibanejad spot on the power play didn't really make sense, even though Lafreniere has played better this year overall than Zibanejad has, is he does not have the rifle one timer. You know, you talk about what the Rangers want to do, they like getting that cross seam pass. Panarin enters the zone with speed down the one side. They establish possession. They get it out to the point. They get it down to the slot. They have options. You know, when you have this power play going at its best, you've established offensive zone possession. You have 5 guys, they have 4 guys. You're trying to manipulate both the puck and the defense to get it to where you want to go. So when you have the Fox point shot, you have the Trocheck to clean up the rebounds, which he hasn't really done as much this year. You have Kreider working the net front. You have the Zibanejad one-timer down here. And then you have Panarin up at the top. You have 5 guys who were all a reasonable threat to score last year. And I'm going to pull up the spreadsheet I put together of the scoring chances and stuff for the power play this year. But there's a very big difference in when you look at the numbers year over year. So this looks a little bit all over the place, but this is a lot of data to throw at you. The power play this year is the lowest it's been for a full season during this period of time. You know, you'll see that 17.86. That's the 7 games against the Devils. You'll recall they lost every game in that series. They didn't score on the power play. They won the games they did score on the power play. That's ultimately what swung that series. But when you look at a few things that really tell the story of what's different and what isn't. Number one, the shooting percentage is down a couple points. That will always indicate, you know, luck versus results. How much work are you putting in to create better offense, higher quality offense? Because the better your shooting percentage, the more likely it is you're creating more dangerous chances. You'll notice they're creating about 5 fewer high danger chances per 60 minutes. And it is important to note that being that we're talking about the power play, which is, you know, at most in a game going to be like 7 or 8 minutes of game time, that some of these numbers are going to be a little bit funky because they're so volatile for the game conditions because of how short a period of time they are during the game. But you can tell based on these rate stats that they're creating a lot less. You know, we're talking about 3 fewer goals per 60. We're talking about almost 1.1 fewer expected goals per 60. We're talking about the same amount of about shots and the same amount of about scoring chances versus the playoffs last year versus the regular season. But if you come down to the next column and you look at the regular season, 15.7 for the whole season. That's about 4% lower than what we were. When we're talking about high danger chances, we're talking about 7 fewer over the course of 60 minutes of power play time, which is probably about a week and a half's worth of games. If we're going to average it out, we're talking about 4 fewer goals for per 60. We're talking about 1.25 fewer expected goals. That tells me that they're getting the puck to they are not shooting the puck from as dangerous areas. The numbers bear out what your eyes are telling you when you watch this power play. And this, when you have both, when you have the anecdotal evidence of, wow, the power play is terrible, and you have the shot maps, and you have the underlying numbers to support the shot maps, that tells you that, well, something's not right here. And then, because of the magic of numbers, you can even dissect what on the power play isn't working. And we're going to do that. I'm going to throw it to Andrew here for a second so he can get a point in. But every facet of this power play is a little bit worse than last year. And when you combine all of that simultaneously, you get a power play that's bottom 5-ish in the entire league, even though this power play unit has 3 guys who've had point per game seasons, a 50 goal forward, and then Trocheck, who, you know, has been close to a point per game forward.
It's really interesting the duality of man when it comes to the last season and a half, let's say, of the New York Rangers, where last season, obviously minus the Hedel injury, everything was going well for them. All the shots were going in, all the passes were getting through. The defense was It was okay. Wasn't was bailed out on by Shesterkin and all these. Like there's a lot more effort there, and they won all these games. And now the inverse is happening, where the power play is cold, 5-on-5 offense is cold. The defense doesn't want to be there. Forwards don't want to back check. Shesterkin is trying his best. I'll say that. And then now he's on IR. Jonathan Quick did not have a good game against Washington. Like Louis Domingue got a win against Chicago. So you know what? Slow clap to spicy pork over there. But essentially, now everything that could go bad for the Rangers, minus injuries, is on the ice. Everything, all the goodwill they had last season, where they had the confidence and the swagger and all these, all of the quote unquote intangibles, they have lost that, and now it's the opposite, where they are gripping their sticks too tightly. They are trying to force passes. They're shooting. The shots they're getting aren't great. They're getting blocked a lot of the time. They went from a team that thrives in unpredictability to a team that is so utterly predictable that teams can essentially skate circles around them, like Washington did. I understand the Rangers scored 4 goals, but Washington had clear control of that entire for most of that game. There were stretches where the Rangers actually showed life, especially in that first period, where the Rangers were skating well, but then late penalty for the Rangers, goal for the Caps, and then off they went. They are this is the same, essentially the same roster as mostly on offense, and they went from a team that is scary to play against because you don't really know what they're doing, to a team that, oh yeah, they're just gonna do these 3 things again. Like, oh, okay, we just stop those and we just win.
So, adding on, we'll go to the next tier of this, which is the individual guys on the power play. And again, the numbers bear out everything being worse this year versus last year. For the most part, when you talk about chances, individual chances, expected goals, high danger chances, shooting percentage, and then just shots versus this year versus last year, the rate stats really tell the story. When you think about 1.98 for Zibanejad versus 2.13, and then 3.55 for Kreider versus 2.98, 2.07 to 2.8, 1.62 to 1.49. The only person who is generating more individual expected goals this year is Fox. And you don't want your defenseman you don't want your power play. And look, Fox has a good shot. He very easily can be a 15 goal guy pretty consistently for a defenseman, which is that upper echelon. But you don't want plays ending in point shots when you're on the power play, because that is probably the lowest percentage shot you're going to get, because it's from the furthest away. And you just think about it simple logic wise. The reason that shot is less valuable is because it's more difficult to make from further away, more traffic in front, which can help you or it can hurt you. You look at the shooting percentages, where Zibanejad is about half of what he was last year. Kreider is 7% worse than last year. Trocheck's is 7% worse than last year. Panarin is a little bit better than last year, but he's also not shooting as much. You compare 14.26 shots per 60 versus 17.37. So we're talking about 3 shots fewer per 60 minutes of power play time. When you try and break down, when you ask a big question like what's wrong with the power play, there's a lot of answers to it. They're getting less lucky on their shots. They're shooting the puck less overall as a unit. They're getting the puck to less dangerous areas. They aren't being as decisive or unpredictable, like you were just saying. And when you have this much data to point out each individual phase of what's not working and what's wrong, it starts to paint a picture. And we've established the power play is like essential, fundamental to what this team is. They can't get by with an average power play if they want to be a serious Stanley Cup contender. If they just want to be a playoff team, yeah, they can finish 17th in power play. That's fine. But even last year in the playoffs, where the offense did start to dry up against Carolina later in that series and against Florida, the power play was still going pretty well. And in the playoffs, fewer chances, harder to convert, better teams, but they were still playing better than this. And that tells me something, because you're playing lower quality of competition in the regular season than you are in the playoffs every night. And it's multifaceted. If Kreider is not as dangerous at the net front, well, that eliminates some of the Fox point shots. And that means some of the Fox point shots that were originally going to be deflections or redirects are now just going to be point shots, which, if the goalie has a clean line of sight, are pretty easy to save. That de incentivizes Fox to shoot and makes the net front more difficult. So that means Trocheck doesn't have as many of those second chance, crash the net rebound opportunities that he got a lot of last year, which means we have to settle for a lot more Zibanejad one timers. And what does that mean for the defense if we're just funneling the puck to one side of the ice to keep setting up one timers? Well, we can cue in on that. We can break up the pass before it even gets there, and we can shade a defender to that side to take away the shooting lane. So if that's not there, what do we have left? We have Panarin shots on his offhand, on his offside, I should say, not his offhand, on his offside from a difficult angle, and we have Fox point shots. It's not hard to dissect why this is not working. Without Kreider as the dangerous net front, every other part of this falls apart. Every
Yeah.
other part of this falls apart. And that's why we said last week, man, if you're not healthy,
Yeah.
sit, get your back straightened out, and then come back, because there's no point in playing at 60% when everything is this
I
bad.
want to highlight this because it goes to what we were what we're talking about. This guy's saying, just to be 77 goes on YouTube. And by the way, we are live on YouTube and on Twitch and all these fun places. Come join us. We're live right now. Are live every Monday. This guy,
I have a good point to go off
this
of
guy
this.
is
Go ahead.
saying, weren't you saying last year the power plays don't matter because penalties aren't called in the playoffs? No, that's not what we said. We were highlighting last year that penalties aren't called as much in the playoffs. Therefore, you need to improve your 5-on-5 offense. Never did we say power plays don't matter in the playoffs. That is not that we never said that. Neither Nick nor I don't want to speak for you, Nick, but I would have to think that we're on the same page here. We never said power plays don't matter. We were highlighting last season that your 5-on-5 has to generate something, because you don't want to have to rely on power plays to win you games in the playoffs. You need to be able to create and generate that offense by yourself without the referees helping you out. That is what we talked about. Never did we say it doesn't matter. That's ridiculous.
To say it doesn't matter is oversimplifying it, because I could understand someone who's only half listening coming to that conclusion. It's not that power plays don't matter. It's very similar to the conjecture in the NFL. It's very similar to the conjecture in the NFL about running backs not mattering. It's not that running backs don't matter. It's that you need to be able to run the ball in certain situations. It's the same thing here. It's not that power plays don't matter. It's that you cannot rely on only the power play to score your goals. You don't have enough power plays in a playoff series to realistically expect to be able to score enough. Even last year, where the Rangers were a 25% or better power play, let's say you're getting 3 power plays a game in the postseason, and that feels like about what you're going to get. If you're scoring 1 out of every 4 attempts, so you would get 2 power play goals over the course of 2 games, because 2 for 6 would be that's 1/3, but you would be about 2 out of every 6 power plays, you would get a power play goal. That's not enough goals to win a playoff series. If you just work out the simple math, even if you only need 3 goals every game and you're talking about 1.5 goals every other game, the math for that doesn't check out. So it's reasonable to say, yes, it's reasonable to say that you want to get the power play as optimal as possible, but you can't be overly reliant on it. It is not a solution to your problems. It is part of your solution, but it's not the overall solution. And when the power play is as broken as it is right now, you really do have to think about it in terms of, well, what can we do? And changing the personnel is obviously something that's on everyone's mind. The problem is, and this is the Chris Kreider conundrum, he's the best in the league at the net front when he's healthy. The problem is there aren't a lot of guys who can do that. Joe Pavelski is retired. Anders Lee has not aged as gracefully into his early 30s as Chris Kreider has. It is very hard to be good at the net front. It is not a simple skill set. And you could say, well, Cooley's big and strong. Sure. it takes a long time to get good at the hand-eye coordination required to deflect and redirect.
Yep.
We've been hearing Sam and Joe talk about on MSG broadcast for what seems like 10 years about how, well, Kreider always stays out at the end of practice to work on redirects. He always stays out at the end of skate and not skate warm-ups to work on his redirects, because that is something that is very much like sharpening a sword. If you are not constantly doing that, you are not going to be great at that. And that's something that 5 years from now, maybe Will Cooley's great at that. But that's something that's going to take 5 or 6 years of work. It's kind of like winning faceoffs, how players typically get better at that the longer they stay in the league, because they learn more tricks. They get more adept at positioning and leverage and understanding what they need to do. Without that net front, we're kind of back to where the Rangers were under Alain Vigneault, where it was, if we don't have that big one-timer, we don't have anything on the power play. And this is very much reminiscent of that. I know there are people who don't remember that, where the Rangers used to not be able to score on the power play at all, where, I think about John Tortorella saying Carl Hagelin sucks on the power play, that's why we don't play him there. Or you think about some of those playoff series where they would go 2 or 3 games straight without scoring on the power play because they just didn't have the personnel for it, because they didn't have any superstars. And right now, it feels like they need to fundamentally redesign what they're going to do. You can't expect to run your power play the way you have the last 4 years if you don't have the most important point. Looking over at that spreadsheet, all of Chris Kreider's scoring chances on the power play this year are registered as high danger. All of his individual high danger chances are registered pretty much as shots on goal. So what that tells me, that he is only putting the puck on the net from dangerous areas. And last year, it's the same thing. Almost all of his shots on goal are being registered as high danger chances. Without those high danger chances, you lose the oomph, the juice, whatever you want to call it, of your power play. And without that, you just have guys standing around the perimeter whipping the puck around, which has been the story for the last month or so.
The funniest aspect, because I was watching the Rangers Caps game on Saturday, and I tweeted about this as well. The funniest thing about that game was Ray Ferraro with a straight face looking at the camera and saying the Rangers miss an alpha male. That I
It's the most simple
nearly
and
I
lazy
can't
analysis there is.
Ray, and it's I like and like
And that's a good way to tie this in. I have a
I
good
like
idea.
Ray
Go ahead.
Ferraro too. I think
I do too. I think he's a lot better on
I would
Canadian
agree,
TV than
and
he is on
I think
ESPN.
he breaks the game down well, and in a
Yes.
way that is digestible for a lot of non-diehard fans to understand. I like Ray Ferraro's broadcasting a lot, so this is not a shot at Ray Ferraro. My brother, like, what are you talking about? Jacob Trouba, quote unquote, was the stereotypical build a bear alpha male, and the Rangers locker room fell apart with him there. Like, I that is the most ridiculous statement I've heard from somebody that knows hockey better than that. Like, you would think somebody like Ray Ferraro would have a better explanation for why the Rangers are falling apart, but it is it's asinine to say that the Rangers are bad because they don't have an alpha male. That doesn't make any sense. Like, Jacob Trouba was your alpha male, and he was so bad on the ice that things fell apart anyway. So, okay, well, you have the stereotypical, like the actual blueprint alpha male on your team who just chicken wings people, and was a quote, like a macho guy on the ice and all these different things, and you still fell apart. So that's your reasoning, is because you don't have an alpha male? Please get real. The Rangers the Rangers can't win because they're not generating anything on 5-on-5, and they can't play defense. Like, that's it. Like, that's, come on, Ray. I really like and I really respect Ray Ferraro as a person and as a broadcaster. You can't say the Rangers are bad because they don't have an alpha male. That is so patently ridiculous. It's come on, Ray, you know better than that.
And I want to tie that to a conversation that's been percolating and simmering over the course of the last few weeks. And I do want to start this entire conversation with saying the Rangers will always be linked to superstar players because they are the Rangers, not because the Rangers are in on every superstar player, but because it's a means of agents or other teams trying to leverage more. Well, if the Rangers are involved, that everybody knows that's code for, well, the Rangers would do it if they could, Yeah, the most famous, of course, being 10 minutes before free agency opened in 2016, and the Rangers had $1 million in cap space, and Bob McKenzie going live on the first day of free agency to say, well, the Rangers are going to try and get Steven Stamkos if he's a free agent in 10 minutes when they had $1 million in cap space. But the JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, all of that, I want to start that conversation here with point A. Think about where you are hearing that the Rangers would do anything to get JT Miller. Where does that start? That starts with the podcast that always, whenever you accuse them of making things up or not being serious, you say, well, we're just joking around. We're a lifestyle podcast and we're friends with people. So if we hear things, it's our obligation to tell you about it. Number one. Number two, the Vancouver Canucks made the playoffs last year. We're a game away from the conference finals. If one of those overtime games against the Oilers goes the other way, the Canucks are in the conference finals. The Canucks, who had Bo Horvat and JT Miller and Elias Pettersson all on the same team 2.5 seasons ago. We are talking about a New York Rangers team that is rudderless and has a lot of young, impressionable players who need somebody to kind of guide them through. And I don't want to say JT Miller is a bad hockey player because he's not. You look at the stats, you look at the underlying numbers, he's an effective hockey player. But I very much can draw a through line between Chris Drury saying this is a team full of softies and getting a mini me of himself in the locker room and thinking it's a good idea. But I'm just going to come out and say it. Adding JT Miller to a group of soft players in Drury's mind is about like the dumbest thing you could possibly do. Because like as much as we long for, the Jimmy Butler, Michael Jordan type of guy to steer this group, that only works if you are the guy. And I don't think you can do that if you're JT Miller on a team where you'd probably be the fourth best player on the team. I think that works if you're Nathan McKinnon on the Avalanche when you are the best player. It works for Jimmy in Miami up until, recent events because you're the best player on the team. I think adding JT Miller to a soft and volatile group only exacerbates the existing problem because you're telling me, well, we need to reassess the direction of our team. So why are we adding a 32, soon to be 33-year-old who's getting paid a lot of money over the next handful of seasons? That's nuked two different locker room iterations of the Canucks. There's just a lot of underlying reasons to think that even if he's a good hockey player, I don't necessarily think this is a good fit, nor do I think this is a good idea.
I think it could work in very specific parameters. The question is, yeah, I'm not out here suggesting that JT Miller would fix the locker room or anything, but if it comes down to brass tacks, if somebody like Zibanejad were to waive his no move clause to go to Vancouver and you get JT Miller in return, then I think at least in the short term, I think it would benefit the team. I don't know how that would impact the locker room. I by all accounts, everybody loves Zibanejad in the locker room, but I'm thinking about it from a practical numbers perspective. Zibanejad's no move clause 8.5 until 2030. JT Miller does not have that kind of contract, so in theory, like that would make the Rangers better on paper. How that would translate to the locker room, I couldn't tell you. But yeah, I mean, I'm not out here saying that I'm not cheering on the Rangers to get JT Miller. I do think if that trade is out there and Zibanejad would waive his no move clause, then I would see if that would make sense for the Rangers to do. Yeah, I just I'm not the biggest fan of JT Miller right now. Like you said, he's a little too old at this point, and that would I don't know what that would do for this team. Like, if you are trading for a player, the idea is that they are going to make your team better on and off the ice. So if you trade for Miller, probably makes your team better on the ice. That's not that's not saying a whole lot, but as of right now, comparatively to what they currently have, but does that make your team better off the ice as well? Because for as much as we want to harp, as much as we like to harp on ice stuff and all these things, clearly off ice still matters to people. And if JT Miller is not a well liked person in the locker room, that is going to bleed onto the ice as well, as it has in Vancouver. Clearly.
Two
Right.
separate
And
times
as
too.
much as Miller and Elias Pettersson and those guys all like to say uh there's nothing to that story and it's all made up and it's all media speculation, it came from somewhere, didn't it? Like like no one just made that up in their head and ran with it. Like these guys
I mean,
like Dollywall is talking about it. Like the Dollywall and guys like that who not only have connections within the Canucks, organization, but they don't just report things. Like these people know what they're talking about. So when verified insiders are talking about how there's a problem in the locker room, there's probably a problem in the locker room that stems from that relationship or other relationships. And that's what you want to bring to a team that needs stability. I don't know about that.
all I'm going to say about that is JT Miller self-admitted said, I had a lot of growing up to do. I needed to be traded two separate times by two different organizations to kind of figure it out, And I don't like to do this organization is good, so they know what they're doing. But like, if Tampa Bay, who is about to win two straight cups and had him under contract very cheaply, mind you, for 5x5, looked at him and said, I would rather have like the 13th pick in the draft. I think you can take a reasonable estimation that they were more willing to just cut their losses when they could. And look, JT Miller is better than Mika Zibanejad right now. There's not an argument. The numbers bear that out. The underlying numbers bear that out. But I don't think that materially changes the Rangers in terms of what's not working right now. He is not a net front guy on the power play. He can do that, but he's not Chris Kreider. Sure, he's a little better defensively than Zibanejad this season, but he's not a lockdown defender. He's not going to make the three replacement level or worse defensemen play better. Who are you playing him with? Are you playing him with Kreider and Riley Smith? Well, is that going to be one functional 5-on-5 line? Do we have one functional 5-on-5 line? That's not Sam Carrick, Jimmy Vesey, and Adam Edstrom. That's really what it comes down to me, and why I've stopped looking at trades as a meaningful solution, at least in season, because there's too much wrong with this team right now. I said it before and I'll say it again. They don't have the above average elite goaltending right now, so they're already on shaky ground. The power play is not going. They have no lines going at 5-on-5. Sure, Hedel, Cooley, and Berard's going fine, but like, they're not playing enough and scoring enough of a volume to make up for the fact the other two lines that are supposed to be scoring at 5-on-5 aren't. Okay, well, you're getting depth scoring from there. That's great, but you're not getting the high end scoring at 5-on-5. And then again, the defense is not working. Fundamentally, the defense is not working. And if you add all of that up, swapping out Zibanejad for JT Miller, marginal improvement. That does not address the fundamental issues. And if you want to tell me, well, Chris Drury is going to overhaul the entire team, please tell me how you are overhauling an entire team in one offseason.
Right.
Or if you get Zibanejad to waive his no trade for JT Miller, okay, that's one. Well, are you going to trade Kreider then? Are you going to trade Trocheck then? Well, no, we can't trade those guys. Those are Drury's guys. Well, we can't trade Trocheck because he's Drury's guy. Well, Trocheck's part of the problem too. Trocheck's played terribly this year, but because he had a good playoffs last year and Zibanejad didn't, Zibanejad's been at the top of the ire list, but Trocheck's been pretty mid. Lafreniere has been pretty mid. Panarin has been pretty average for his standards. And when you have this many things working against you, it seems hard for me to believe you're going to be able to fix it in one offseason. I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday about Borgen, and we both agreed, like, he's an NHL player, but that's exactly the type of player the Rangers I'll look at and be like, well, we fixed him because he came from Seattle to here and he had a better plus minus while he was here. So we're going to give him a 4x4 contract to play third pair minutes, even though he's probably a replacement level defender. Or same thing with Vakanainen, where he's not bad. He's not good either. The Rangers have so many areas they need to improve on this team. And we're talking about making marginal
Yeah.
improvements. And looking for those marginal improvements is what got us here in the first place.
First of all, I want to highlight a couple of comments that we got. First of all, this guy says Gallant knew this and that's why he got fired. No, Gallant got fired because he can't coach. Can we all establish that really quickly?
Okay, I wouldn't say he got fired because he couldn't coach. I will say he got fired because it's a lot easier to fire
Sure.
the coach than it is to
Yes,
overhaul
but
the
also
roster.
he couldn't coach. Both of these things can be true.
I can't say I can't say he couldn't coach. I would say he was
Yes,
not a
sure.
good coach. I would say Gallant was
Yeah,
a
I mean,
league
like, I can't.
average coach with a
Can
good
he
team.
coach at the NHL level? Yeah, I sure. But was he a good coach at the NHL level? Could he have did he get the most out of the Rangers? The answer is no. Therefore, that's why he got fired.
No.
Also, I want to
Yes.
where this comment. First of all, Dirk, I see your comments. Please stop caps locking all of your comments. We see them. We
No,
see them. It's
that's
okay. You don't
fine.
have to. We don't. You don't have to yell at us. We see them. Also, Mika Zibanejad, contrary to popular belief, was never a great two-way player. Like,
He's
yeah,
above
I'm
average, but he
not
wasn't
like,
great.
yeah, he went at the top of his game. Mika Zibanejad can defend reasonably well, but he's not winning the Selkie. And
No, no.
it's
That
the conversation that I hate using the word narrative, but the narrative around Zibanejad is he's an elite two-way player. No, no, he can when he wants to, when he's really like you said, Dirk, when he's confident and he's playing really well, he can defend adequately uh, against the top guys, but he was never an elite two-way player that's going to be a Selke nominee. So yeah, and his defense has completely fallen off a cliff, and so has his offense. So my man's is doing cart. He's the Brett Howden right now of the Rangers, even though yesterday against Chicago made that mistake in the front area, and then he got a couple of good plays. Okay, like all right, Meek, I see you. But like overall, especially this season, man, oh boy. And we've talked about Mika Zibanejad at nauseum, so I don't want to repeat all the things that we said, but yeah, okay, give him confidence, but his defense, it was never great. It was fine. It was better. It's above average, but I wouldn't say Migo was a an elite two-way player.
Going off of that, one last thing I want to say before we get out of here. I wanted to talk about the defense a little more in depth, but we spent a lot of time talking about the power play. But it's kind of insane they're still playing Lingren first pair minutes because he's
Yeah,
non-functional. If you look at the splits of Fox with Miller versus with Lingren, Lingren's like 20 percentage points worse than like all of the metrics when he's away from Fox. And Miller's numbers away from Fox aren't good either. But the simple matter of the fact is, you could probably have two functional pairs in Joan Schneider and Fox with Miller, and then the third pair can be any combination of Borgen, Vakanainen, and Lingren, and you'd probably be getting better results just because you wouldn't play that third pair as much. But Lingren's not an NHL defenseman right now. He is
yep,
non-functional, and it's it's insane to see how fast he's fallen off considering he's not even that old. But if they're going to keep stubbornly doing this, again, like I was saying at the beginning of the episode and the note I'll end on, this isn't very
hmm
fun. This is
yep,
not enjoyable. A- At a certain point, it does feel like you're wasting your time because there are better things to do than watch this iteration of the Rangers. And it sucks because this team is more talented
sure,
than they've played. And that's kind of what's so galling about all of this and why everybody is kind of at wit's end, for lack of a better word. And people will take their pot shots. It's easy. I don't care. If the Devils want to make fun of the Rangers, it's their prerogative. The Devils are winning hockey games. You can do what you want when you're winning. When you're losing, you just kind of got to eat it until you play better. And until the Rangers play better, they don't really have the right to complain about a whole
sure.
lot. And they said it on the broadcast yesterday. Callahan said it as far as talking about the Blackhawks of like, if you lose and you tried your ass off and it was just the night that wasn't your night, you can live with that. But the Rangers are pretty far away from efforts like that right now. Good to win against the Blackhawks just because to stop the bleeding, good to win against the Bruins. But like, there's a lot of games left. There are a lot of games left this season, and it's hard to feel excited about the prospect of what are we going to do to improve this team? Because do I really want the general manager making dramatic moves, trying to take the heat off of himself? Because desperation only breeds bad ideas, and I'm very scared for the direction of the team.
I want to highlight one more comment here before we go, and I saw this earlier, and he doubled down on it. Dominico, hire Quenville. He'll bring discipline and structure. You can ask